The glitz and glamour of Hollywood commands most of the attention in the city of Los Angeles, but the crosstown basketball showdown between USC and UCLA creates just as much drama as Tinseltown. Featuring some of the best coaches and players of all time, this long-running college hoops rivalry is recognized as one of the best in the sport, with the teams having met over 250 times. We'll take a look back at the rivalry between the Trojans and the Bruins on this episode of Stadium Rivals. As rivals across all sports, USC and UCLA are quite familiar with each other. In fact, in 1928, the first contest in the rivalry occurred a year before the football rivalry kicked off. It was a 3-game set in February of '28, with UCLA going 2-1 over USC that started off the festivities. Meeting each other as often as 4 times a year, USC went on an historic run that began in 1932. For 41 games from 1932 to 1943, USC would get the better of their Los Angeles counterparts. The 41-game win streak over one opponent was a national record until UCLA topped that mark with their record 42nd straight win over Cal in 1980. UCLA won the first of 2 games in 1943 to break the streak. USC held a firm edge over UCLA 59-19 from 1927 to 1948, when perhaps the sport's biggest name came to town. A 3-time All-American in his playing days at Purdue, John Wooden was hired by UCLA in 1948 and embodied the spirit of college basketball, setting many of its records as the coach of the Bruins. You know all the stats: a record 88-game win streak, 10 national titles in 12 years, including a record 7 titles in a row. And the Wizard of Westwood dominated USC, going 61-20 against the Trojans in his 27 years in Westwood. After turning around the program and winning national championships in 1964 and 1965, John Wooden had another ace up his sleeve in the form of Lou Alcindor. The player soon would go by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he dominated the sport, even getting the dunk outlawed by the NCAA. But it was USC that took Alcindor and UCLA to 2 overtimes before losing 61-55 in their first of back-to-back meetings in the 68-69 season. One night later, on March 8, 1969, USC defeated UCLA 46-44, marking the Bruins' first ever loss at Pauley Pavilion. Alcindor would lead the Bruins to the national title in 1969, the third of UCLA's record 7 straight titles. For much of the 1970-1971 season, UCLA and USC were ranked number 1 and number 2. Number 2 USC lost its first game of the year against UCLA 64-60. In the final game of the season, UCLA would win again 72-63. In those days, only the conference champions would make the NCAA tournament. So USC, the number 2 team in the country at 24-2, would be left out of the 1971 NCAA tournament because UCLA beat them twice. This game was used as an example that led to the tournament expanding in 1975. A long-haired, Grateful Dead-loving big man by the name of Bill Walton led the 1973-74 Bruins into a crucial Pac-8 game against USC. Tied for first in the conference with a berth in the 1974 NCAA tournament on the line, Walton led UCLA to a blowout 82-52 win over the Trojans. Wooden retired from UCLA the following year in 1975. The rivalry was perhaps most evenly matched during the 1984-85 season, when both matchups took multiple overtimes to decide a winner. USC dispatched UCLA 78-77 in double OT in their first matchup. Not even a month later, it would take the Trojans 4 overtimes to beat the Bruins 80-78 and earn a spot in the NCAA tournament. Outstanding freshmen marked this entry in the UCLA-USC rivalry at the end of the 2007-2008 season. UCLA's freshman Kevin Love matched up with USC's freshman O.J. Mayo in the semifinals of the Pac-10 tournament. After splitting their regular season matchups, the teams met in the postseason for the first time. The Bruins would pull out the 57-54 win en route to a Final Four appearance that season. History permeates every bit of the UCLA-USC college basketball rivalry. They play for supremacy in the Pac-12, but also bragging rights in Los Angeles. The Bruins hold a 142-109 edge over the Trojans, heading into their matchups in 2019. USC hopes to close the gap between themselves and UCLA in one of college basketball's best rivalries, the best of which we break down on Stadium Rivals.